TypeScript is everywhere these days. In fact, developers prefer to learn TypeScript over JavaScript. So why this tool is so important and what benefits it gives to the developers? I'm glad you asked, because this is the first episode of the new series Too Long to Read TypeScript. And today I would like to show you what is TypeScript, how it works, and how you can easily integrate it to your projects. But first, let's learn the most important thing, why we need types in the first place. So we have a lot of typing to do in this course, so let's get started. Hello friends, it's Nikos here, and right before we start, I would like to share with you a small coding challenge. So check this code and try to spot any mistakes. Take a moment, pause this video, and we will review it at the end. Okay, great. So one small disclaimer before we start. The truth about TypeScript is that it's not a standalone language like, for example, C# or JavaScript or Java, Python, most of the languages that you know. It's basically like a superset on top of JavaScript. So knowing JavaScript is required to learn TypeScript. Okay, so now let's see what is possible to do in JavaScript and how you can use TypeScript, how it can help us. So I'm here in my code editor. I use Visual Studio Code, and I would like to create a new file. I will call it index.js. And now in this file, I would like to build a small demo application, let's say a music player. So probably my music player will have tracks. So this will be an object of a track. We can have a title for the track, let's say Bohemian Rhapsody. We can have the artist name, it's Queen. We can also have the album title. And I will add a length property just to store the length of this track. I double checked this on Google. This is the actual length of the song in seconds. And I store the number here because I decided to use the number. Alternatively, I could store a string, but let's go with a number for now. And let's console log this track just to see if everything works. So Command-Shift-P or Control-Shift-P, and you can create a new terminal. And then what I will do is use Node.js to run my index.js file. And here is the output on screen. So everything seems to work fine. Okay, let's try to change something here. Let's try to update the name of the track to something else, another name. And let's save it again. And now I will run it. So take a look at this. I forgot that I called the name of the track title, and now I used name. So now I ended up having two different properties for the same thing. So I just changed the object structure, right? As you can see, my editor doesn't know about the types, right? And it didn't actually prevent me from having such a mistake. We can go and make another mistake. Remember the length property? We had a discussion before. What if I forget completely that I store it as a number? And what if I use the representation of a string? I'm saving the file. I will run it again. Boom. Now my length property has been completely changed, and from number, it's a string, which it's not really a good thing, right? If I have to be a little bit more like bad, mean, I can say bye-bye track. So I can completely destroy this object. I'm saving again the file, Let's see, running on Node. Oh, I get an error. The reason I got the error is because I use const, but if I had used, for example, let, yes, bye track. So basically, let allows you to reassign variables, right? And here I had an object and I changed completely this object and I destroy it. Imagine if this was the object that somebody stores the state of the whole application. It will be destroying the whole application. So that pretty much explains the problem that we face here. It's more like expectations versus reality, right? You are a new developer, let's say you are a junior, and you start your career, you learn JavaScript, everybody's working with JavaScript, and you want to make like the next big application, like the next Spotify or the next Netflix out there. And then you realize that although everything is modern nowadays, we have a lot of new technologies, we have the metaverse, no comment on that. So the language that we are using is basically created back to the 90s. If you remember, back then we had these CRT monitors. I mean, the web was barely able to display images, right? So we had JavaScript to add a little bit of spice, to make a little bit the websites to be interactive. And we had so many like technologies back then. We had Java applets on the web, they failed. We had ActionScript on Flash. Okay, this worked, but you know, Flash is not on the web anymore. And yeah, back then, I mean, the technology was so premature and everything was pretty much, you had only the basics. We didn't have so much power. We were using a 56K modem to connect to the internet, and we had this strange noise. We had to wait 1 minute to connect to the internet. You know, this sound, this bling, bling, bling. So you see the situation with JavaScript and how it affects the code. The whole language was not designed to support the complexity of the applications that we use these days. If you are a single developer and you have a very small project, right, this cannot be a problem. I mean, you know pretty much what you're doing. But if you are a junior, or if you have a large project with a lot of teams that are working on this project, then one commit can destroy so many things, and it can increase the development times, it can increase the code review times. So we need a feature, we need a solution for that. And this is exactly what TypeScript brings here. So let me try something else. I'm still in the same project, and what I will try, I expanded again my file explorer, and I will right click on my index file and change the name. I will rename it to .ts. So this is the file extension of TypeScript. And as you can see, my editor already understands TypeScript. So I didn't save the file yet. I press enter, and now I go back to my code. Let me reduce a little bit my terminal and take a look at this. I mean, TypeScript is now enabled in my editor. And as you can see, without even starting the project, right away, it tells me that the name obviously does not exist in this object that I created, and it provides me all the available properties. So obviously this is a title. If you try to compile this, it will fail. So it will basically return an error. We can see this later on. Here I have my length property, and take a look at this. It doesn't exist. It says that length doesn't exist. I made a typo before. I don't know if you noticed, but I forgot to put the N here. And basically TypeScript prevented me from mistyping this property. And there is, of course, another issue here. The string property is a number. I'm very happy that we found this. So far, we've seen that TypeScript automatically understands the types of our properties or variables. But it doesn't stop there. We can set our own types. Let me show you how this can be done. I'm here back to my code example, and what I can do is go all the way up and create a new type. Type is a keyword that is only available in TypeScript, so this will not work in JavaScript, right? I can name my type truck. Note that I'm using a capital T here, and this can be an object which has a title, which is a string. This is how you specify the type per property. I have artist, I have album, and I have another property which is the length. And the length is a number. This is how you declare, how you define the numbers, integers or floats. They all work the same. They are all numbers. Okay, I have created my truck, but now I need to associate that this specific variable here is indeed a truck. So I can use the same syntax, after the truck, I can use the same syntax and specify that this is a truck. So from now on, everywhere I go in my project, if I hover over the truck variable, I can see that it's a truck. This is very, very powerful. So take a look at this. TypeScript has already become smarter. It recognizes that this album here is not basically a valid property, right? And that's correct because the correct one is album. That was another typo that I did before, and I don't know if you noticed. So I changed this back to album. I'm also changing this to const because we are not planning to reassign it, and boom, our code is ready. I hope that now you have a good understanding how types can help us write code faster. So now there is another feature that I would like to present to you. You see, object-oriented languages like C# or Swift, they have many ways, many options to structure our code. They provide interfaces, they provide classes, a lot of different tools. TypeScript brings all these features to JavaScript. And let me show you how you can quickly modify this type definition that we have and use a class instead. So I just have to rename this to class and remove this equal sign. And if I want, of course, I can use an interface. They are serving a different purpose. But first, let's implement this class by creating a constructor. Very well. So what I can do as well is define types for my arguments here. Perfect. So this is a very simple constructor that just sets the property. So we have a class. Let's try to instantiate the object. So I would like to refactor this code a bit. So we have a new truck. In a minute, I will show you how we can compile this code and see the result. But before, I would like to summarize with you the features of TypeScript that we learned today. So first of all, we talked about types. We can specify types pretty much everywhere. Types can be specified automatically. So when you declare an object, if you don't provide the type, it stores the first value, the type of the first value that you assign. And basically, it's impossible to change the type after that. We can also set custom types. And of course, we can have multiple features that help us to structure our code. Finally, TypeScript helps our text editor to become a little bit smarter. So if I make a typo here, the text editor will immediately show the mistake. The compiler will not compile this code. And of course, I have better code completion, like as I type here, track dot something, so I can definitely see what options I have. So this makes me write code much, much faster. Okay, and now that we are familiar with the TypeScript syntax, I would like to show you how to install the TypeScript compiler and how to initialize your first TypeScript project. To do that, you will need to have Node.js installed. All the JavaScript projects nowadays work with Node.js. TypeScript is not a different story. As I mentioned, Visual Studio Code has built-in support for the language itself, but it requires you to install the TypeScript compiler. Okay, so let's go back to my editor, and what I have done here is to restructure the code a little bit to fit in the middle of the screen. And what I will do is launch the terminal. And here in the terminal, what I would like to do is npm install, you see this command already, global TypeScript. This will take a minute, but once it's done, you can verify that you have the TypeScript compiler installed by running tsc-version. Once you get the version back, then everything is set up. Let's initialize the project by running tsc-init. This will create a ts configuration JSON file in our folder. Here it is. There are plenty of options here. The most important ones are the target, which language version of JavaScript we want to support, and which modular system we want to use. So now we are targeting ES5. Okay, so let me close this configuration file, and now it's time to run TypeScript. We want to compile this TS file into JavaScript. Try to run this TS file as it is in Node. You will see I will get syntax error because Node doesn't understand all these type definitions that we have. What I can do instead is run tsc without any argument. Don't let my terminal fool you. This is the command that you need to run, tsc. This will generate a new index.js file. Here it is. Of course, now I can run node.js, and here I see the result. I verify that our code runs perfectly. Let me close the terminal, and I would like to compare TypeScript and the JavaScript file side by side, just to see what are the differences. So as you can see, since we are targeting ES5, which doesn't have support for classes, TypeScript has converted our class into functions. This is a functional constructor pattern that we used back in ES5, but it works. It actually provides the same functionality as the code on the left-hand side, but as you can see, all the type declarations have been completely removed because TypeScript has support for type declarations, but JavaScript doesn't. And now, my friends, you know everything you need to know in order to start using TypeScript in your applications. There are multiple ways to integrate it. First of all, you can use it as a type checker as you write code. Another idea is to go fully to initialize a project, TypeScript project, and start using the syntax to structure your code. You will also have smarter error detection, but you will have to spend some time to learn the new syntax. Another option is to integrate TypeScript as a tool in your pipeline. So you basically use the TypeScript compiler, and every time you commit a new code, you actually perform a type checking. You can have a look on the official TypeScript documentation. It's a very nice way to get started. It has well-written articles and a very nice handbook. Make sure that you also check the playground, which lets you run the TypeScript compiler online so that you don't have to install it locally. Basically, you type the TypeScript code on the left-hand side and you see the result of the JavaScript code on the right-hand side. But now, let's review the coding challenge I gave you in the beginning of this video. So I'm going back to my editor here, and the only thing I have to do is rename my file to .ts. And once it's done, boom, I can see all the mistakes I did in this file. First of all, this is an array, and add is not a method of type JavaScript array. So what I have to do instead is use push. Another issue here says that type string is not assignable to type number. So basically, it says that if I add these two, the result is a string, which makes sense if one of those values is a string. If I look carefully, then I can see that the string is here, and if I change this back to 111, then boom, this error goes away. Okay, so one more error to fix. If I hover over this error, I see that argument of type property artist is missing. Let me go back to my code. I have title, artist, oops, this is artists. Okay, once I fix this, then everything is fixed. How many errors did you find? Let me know in the comments down below. That was it for today. Make sure to check my blog post about TypeScript. It's a nice way to recap what we've learned in this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you like it, just press the thumbs up button. If you don't like it, please don't tell my mom. If you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe. It's totally free. Actually, our journey has just started. This is the first video of our series about TypeScript. I will try to upload a new video every week. If you want to get notified, click on the bell icon. YouTube will make sure we will stay in touch. So see you in the next one. Thank you very much and have a creative day.